Good morning, Sec 3 history students. I'm Mr. Seow, and today I want to teach you a source-based lesson on message and purpose. For today's lesson, you will need your writing materials, particularly a highlighter, as well as this worksheet on message and purpose, this set of notes. And if at any point you need to speed up, slow down, or pause this video to suit your learning pace, please proceed and do so. Okay, so let's start. So we first start by highlighting message and purpose. These two source-based skills are interlinked, and the link is that for you to be able to craft the purpose of a source, for you to be able to understand the objective, the intended outcome, what the source wants to achieve, you first have to be able to see the source's message. Because the components of purpose, which I will teach you as verb, audience, message, outcome, VAMO, includes message. So in other words, message is the first step. And the message is the main argument of a source. So message flows very, very naturally from the inference skill. Inference and message are linked, but they're not quite the same thing. So let's start by understanding the skill of message. Let's start by understanding the skill of message. When we look at inference, which was our previous lesson, when we look at inference, we said that it was a guess, it was a conclusion based on the question focus, right? So we said that the inference is what the source says with regards to a question focus. It's a guess, it's a conclusion. The message of a source, you could think of it as, the higher form of an inference. Why? Because the message of a source is when you try to understand the main argument, the main idea of a source, but you don't have a question focus. You sum up the source, you say, okay, the main point of the source is so and so, but you don't have a question focus to guide you. What do I mean? So let's just look at these two question types, right? If I were to tell you that one type's an inference and the other is a message, which would you think is which? So you could take a look. One is what can you learn from source A about Nazis' policy towards communists. One is what is the message. Now, clearly this would be a message question, and this would be an inference question. And this is an inference because you can see a question focus here, but here there is no question focus. Right? Okay. So I invite you to look at source A. You'll notice that it's exactly the same source that we tackled in the inference lesson, because I want to show you how we can use the same sources, but we can ask different questions. I want to use familiar sources so that we are not caught up on the source, but rather we polish and practice this new skill of message. So when we look at this source, huge crowds, 4/5 supported the Nazis, 1/5 supported the Communist Party. Both sides had picked up chairs. A savage fight began. So what are some ideas that emerge from this report? What's the message? What's the report trying to say? Well, maybe you take a minute to write down some ideas you have. But I think two things stand out. So again, I hope that you paused and wrote out some ideas you have from the source before I write, because once I've written something, once the ideas come out of my keyboard, you will have lost the chance to exercise your own thinking, your own critical reasoning, your logical faculties. So some key things stand out. One is that the Nazis and communists use violence as a political tool. Another is that the Nazis were proud to use violence against the communists. So when we look at this source, I think these ideas really come out. Even, the Germany in late 1920s was full of political violence. So if I were to look at the source, these ideas come out, but perhaps the most important idea would be the combination of the first two, because the first two ideas sum up the whole source, whereas the third idea only looks at this part of the source. So the main argument would be something like a combination of the first two ideas, which is the Nazis used violence against the communists to suppress the communists and were proud of doing so. Proud to do so. So notice that I'm trying to combine different ideas into an argument. This is the trick to message. The trick to message is to combine your many ideas into a single argument, which captures the whole source. In fact, I could even capture the third idea. Political to suppress communist, proud to do so, which made Germany a violent place, dangerous place. I've captured all three ideas. Okay. So, so the trick to message is to look at the source. And here, look, there's no focus to help you. There's no question focus to help you. The trick of the message question, what is the message of source A, is to look at the source, extract out the ideas, and combine them into a main argument. So maybe you can write this down here. The trick is to extract key ideas from source, combine into a main argument. So if I were to give you a one sentence approach, one sentence tactic, one sentence strategy on how to do message, it is look at the source, read the source, interpret the source, extract out the key ideas, weave it and craft it and combine it and merge it into a main argument. Okay. So I'm going to proudly take this main argument. And the question is, what is the message of source A? The first step is ATQ. The command word is message. Just like how we ATQ for the inference question. For this question, we just use the command word, the message of source A. This. And here we can plug in our answer. That the Nazis used violence and fighting as a political tool to suppress the communists, and were proud to do so, which made Germany a dangerous place. And then I take the source, and this is my message answer. That's it. Yeah, it is quite straightforward. The trick, the difference from inference is that there's no longer a focus as an anchor. There's no focus to guide you. You extract out the main ideas from the source. And one trick is to actually look at the source-based case studies anchor question, the topic of the source-based case study. Anchor questions could sometimes be like, how did Hitler rise to power? Did the Nazis use violence to rise to power? So another trick is, okay, maybe you can write it down. Answer the SBCS anchor question. So for example, if the source-based question, the anchor question, the main topic was something like, did the Nazis use violence to rise to power? Then your message would start by saying, the Nazis used violence to rise to power because. So you start with the anchor question. The Nazis did use violence to rise to power because or by, and then you continue using ideas from the source. So these are just some tricks on approaching the message question. Okay. So that's done with question 1. Now let's go to question 2. This time we are trying to get the message of a pictorial source. I think this is quite a straightforward source. What's the main argument? Again, we start with generating ideas. What ideas do we have? Okay. we have the idea that, the person in the middle, that is Hitler. Hitler conducted passionate public rallies to gain support from Germans. Another main idea would be there were many German people rushed to hear Hitler speak and support him. And from these two ideas, I could even generate a third idea, which is Hitler charisma was a key factor in the Nazi party's popularity, right? So in fact, I can start weaving together these ideas into a main argument. Hitler conducted many public rallies and speeches, which were well attended by German people, and thus Hitler won support for the Nazis. And thus Hitler's charisma and charm. Okay, great. So notice that I generated 3 ideas from the source, and I have weaved together all 3 ideas into a single main argument. And you might be asking, Mr. Seow, what is the point of trying to park and combine all 3 ideas? Why can't I just have one idea? Why must I have 3 ideas? Okay, the reason is that in a message question, we look for the depth of thinking. So in this case, when I look at this source as a teacher, I might think this idea is descriptive. I'm just looking at the source. But this idea, okay, the third one, is the true message, is the deepest level thinking. So as a teacher, I could, for example, award this now I'm thinking as a teacher, as a 2-mark answer. I could award this as a 4-mark answer. They are both ideas, but as a teacher, I could say that one idea is better than the other. And therefore, students who hit the third idea would get a higher mark than those who hit the second idea. And this is how we also mark at the national level, for national level humanities marking. And therefore, the very easy little trick that you could use to make sure you don't miss out on your marks is simply to generate 3 ideas for every source, every message question, generate 3 ideas and combine them, so that even if this was the 2-mark component, you would still hit the highest level, 4 marks, and then the last mark for evidence. So this is the trick. You weave together your ideas and you make sure you hit the highest level. And as humanities markers, we don't practice negative marking. We award the highest mark based on the best answer we have seen from your whole paragraph. So it is fine to write more. The only thing you lose is time, but you will we will give you the highest mark that your answer deserves. So let's go to the question. What is the message of source B? Again, we start ATQ. Message of source B is that Hitler conducted many public rallies and speeches which were well attended, and thus Hitler's charm and charisma won public support for the Nazis. We said that, this would be a good message. This is evidence from source B, which shows evidence for pictorial source. Describe the picture, which shows crowds. He gave a public speech in 1926. I know this from the pic photo, the crowds of people, And I know this from the Provenance 1926. Okay, so we have achieved the message for source B. And now we go to the message for source C. I am speeding you through the message lesson because the next part of this lesson is actually the heavier component, the purpose lesson. So you now have done two message questions. You are familiar with the protocol. You read the source and then we generate ideas. Yeah. Behavior of Nazi Party became more vicious and savage. This sounds like important. It's quite important. Terrible acts of violence. Convicted of the crime. Okay. So what are some ideas that we can generate? One idea would be the Nazi Party was violent, aggressive, and terrible. No, the word terrible is that, and horrible. Behaved and kept fighting. Um, this one, right? The Nazis were unforgiving and ruthless to their political opponents, and Nazi stormtroopers' actions were illegal and punished. So these are three ideas that emerge from these three yellow highlights. If you need time to pause and figure out how I generated these three ideas, please read the yellow highlight, read what I wrote, and see if you could have generated it yourself. Don't just watch this video and hear it like white noise just so that you can finish watching the video. Please activate your thinking, use your brain, figure out how each idea generates out the how each piece of evidence generates out an idea. Okay, now we're going to weave into the argument. What's the main argument of source C? The argument is that the Nazis party was violent and aggressive and ruthless, was frequently violent and ruthless to their political opponents, even taking illegal actions which were punished. So I have combined these three ideas. I'm going to do the box. You are familiar with this by now. The ATQ, the message of source C, is that this is evident from source C, which states okay. At any point, if you needed to pause the video to copy the notes into your own worksheet, you can do so. Pause the video and copy down the notes that you need. And with this, I have finished the lesson on message. I finished the lesson on message. Let's recap. What is a message? The message is the main argument of a source. And how do we actually do it? We do it by generating ideas from source, combining them into an argument. So read the source, generate ideas, combine them to an argument. If you need a starting point, you can use the anchor question, the main topic of the source. Where do you find that? You find that before all the sources, at the background information. So in the source-based case study, at the background information, it normally ends with a question like, how did Hitler use violence to rise to power? Or, was Germany's aggression the reason for World War II? Or, why did the USA lose the Vietnam War? So these are sort of anchor questions that where you can start your by answering that question, that's how you could start your message answer if you are lost. But those of you who already know how to do message, you can go right in, look for the key ideas. Normally, there will be about 2 or 3 key ideas. You generate those ideas in your own words, generate the key ideas in your own words, and then weave them together into a main argument. Okay. Please copy this down. Make sure you know, again, message the main argument or source, generate ideas, combine the argument. Okay. Once you're satisfied, let's go to purpose. And purpose is a skill that will stay with you. It will follow you all the way to N level. Purpose is not just a skill to answer purpose questions. I will say it right from the outset. The purpose skill will be used for purpose, comparison, surprise, reliability, proof, utility, and hybrid questions. This purpose skill is used for 7 different source-based types of skills, including purpose itself. It is one of the central skills that you'll be using all the time. And so let's really nail the purpose skill. The purpose question wants you to study a historical source and figure out what the source wants to achieve. So what the source wants to achieve, that is the purpose. Which means that there are actually components to a purpose question. Because when the source wants to achieve something, for example, imagine a source that wanted to achieve world peace. To get world peace, you need countries to stop fighting. Countries to stop fighting. Countries is an audience, stop fighting is an action. So there are components to a purpose answer, and these are the 4 components we will use when we write purpose answers: a verb and an audience first. So for example, a source might want to convince the Germans. The verb is convince. The audience is the Germans. Or it could be criticize the Communist Party. The verb is criticize. The audience is the Communist Party. Now, I want you to write at the top some potential verbs that we will use for Sec 3. Convince, criticize, educate, brainwash, assure, urge, praise, inform. Okay, we can start with these verbs. You know, the verb convince is used almost all the time. Like, if all else fails, you just go back to this verb convince. That's the most basic one that almost everyone uses all the time. But sometimes one. But sometimes you realize that there may be other verbs that are more suited. So sometimes, for example, you have a speech from Hitler, and Hitler is saying, this is a very famous speech in 1939, if I remember, 1st January 1939 at the Sports Palace. Hitler makes this crazy speech. You can search it up. And he says something to the lines of, if the Jews want to play with Germany, they want to make a mess, they will start a world war. And Hitler says this about the Jews. The Jews are going to start a world war. World Jewry will be destroyed in the world war. So, he's telling the Jews, if you try anything funny with Germany, you'll start a world war and you'll destroy yourselves. So in that kind of speech, obviously the verb is warn. You see what I mean? He's trying to warn the Jews. And then you could have another speech by the German propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels. And Joseph Goebbels, he's gonna send out lots of radio broadcasts and speeches and programs that praise the great leader, the German Führer, Adolf Hitler, for inspiring Germany, bringing Germany out of the economic problems, standing up to the evil Western powers. And Goebbels here, he might be convincing, he might also be brainwashing the German people. So there's a whole panoply of verbs that you could use in your arsenal. But let us start with the easy ones. Convince is going to be very common. But write down these verbs anyway, so that when you are doing practices, you can select the ones that you want to use. And that's the time to really practice free range and think about why am I using this verb, for what reason. audience. Audience sometimes can find it in the provenance. Sometimes the provenance gives it away. If not, you look at the provenance, you look at the source, you can guess where the source is going with the audience. Verb audience message. Message. We have just learned what a message is. The message is the main argument of a source. We have just learned this. And finally, it ends with an outcome. So the outcome is due to audience actions. I repeat, the audience. The reason why I have an audience, the reason why I'm convincing Germans is so that Germans will do something. They will take some action. And by taking some action, it leads to a final result. So the outcome, okay, is an audience action that leads to a final result. The outcome is an audience action. The audience has listened to your message. They will now do something. It creates a final result. And that's what we call the outcome. And so historical context. In other words, the purpose skill, we can use this acronym VAMO, verb, audience, message, outcome. We use acronym VAMO to remind ourselves, to prompt us on how to craft the answer. Where's evidence? Well, we learned in the previous lesson on message that evidence comes right after message. So it is the same thing. Over here in the purpose answers, your evidence comes in after the message. Purpose question. Whenever you see a why was something done, question coming out, why did this source? Why does this source? Something like that. The question would be something along those lines. So like, why was this photograph published? Why did Hitler make this speech? Why did the Communist Party put out this poster? Why did President Hindenburg send this letter? So whenever you think about the question of why does this source exist, it is a purpose question. Okay. So let's start with a most basic question. Why was source A published? So we said that the Nazi Party report is source A. And when we look carefully at this provenance, you see that it's published within the Nazi Party. In other words, the audience is hinted to us. The audience is Nazi Party members. Nazi Party members are people who already believe Hitler, or people who already signed on to this crazy agenda of overthrowing the Treaty of Versailles, making Germany great, getting rid of the Jews, expanding Germany's land to achieve proper land, pursuing a ethnically cleansed and pure Germany for the blue-eyed, yellow-haired, golden-haired, blonde, iron children to thrive and prosper. So the Nazi Party wanted to Nazi Party members that what, sought evident what, done so that what, context what. Okay, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to go back here. We already figured out the message of source A in the previous lesson on message. And that's why I put these two lessons together with the same sources so that we can focus on the skill. Because we have already done message, I now want to spend the time looking at other components. So we said that but I'm going to change this a little bit. It should be which state, sorry. I'm going to change this a little bit. I think the emphasis for the Nazis here is that the Nazis successfully suppressed the communists. I'm going to remove the part about Germany a dangerous place, because the Nazi Party members don't need to know about the negative part of their behavior. They want the good things. So the source here is about crushing the communists, that they won. Nazis were successful at suppressing the communists. This is the message, right? Yes, we use violence. Yes, most of our supporters came. So maybe, you know what? I'm just going to modify this message. Many Nazi party members turned out at the Nazi party rally, used violence and fight, and were successful at violently defeating the communists. Sorry, I did say that I was going to use the message from before, but I think this message would make a lot more sense. You will see why. So in this case, the message I want is that all the supporters came. There was a fight, and terrorism was badly crushed. Okay, I have the evidence, and I want to round it up. So I have audience, I have the message, I need the verb. In this case, I think because it's a report, I think the verb I want to use is inform. Inform. And I need an action. I need an outcome. We said the outcome is an audience action, which is why, notice this, Sec 3 students, I've repeated the audience here. The reason I repeat the audience is because the audience, upon hearing this message, are going to do something. So, I'm going to ask you to do something now. I want you to think, read this whole answer so far, and think. If you were a Nazi party member and you just read the report's message is many Nazi party supporters came to the rally. They were successful at defeating the communists. What is your next action? What would you do? You would, right, be inspired and enthused about Nazi victories. They would attend more Nazi party rallies and behave more violently to confront the communist enemies. So now this is the audience action. Now I'm going to go to a result. What's the result? Thus, Nazi rallies would get bigger and bigger, showcasing the Nazi party strengths while also intimidating their enemies, the Communist Party. So see here, this is an action and this is a final result. This is an action. The Nazi Party members will be inspired, be enthused, they'll attend more rallies, they'll be more violent. They're like, look, the report said we won. Let's go and fight one more. Let's fight the good fight. Let's win more. They are going to confront the communists. And so the result is that bigger rallies, more Nazi events, the influence grows, and the enemies get scared. So this report has a purpose. It's being circulated to the Nazi party members to really rile them up, energize them, get them excited to be more thuggish and violent and attend more rallies. Coming from the context, so now the last part is historical context. This one you use the sources here. Coming from the context of 1927. What context is about? What's happening in that time that helps you understand the source. Again, context is what's happening at the time. Context is that helps you understand the source. In this case, in 1927, Nazi Party is rising in popularity and it needs its members to be more enthusiastic. The stormtroopers, can talk a bit more about this, were known for their violence, and there were many street fights. And they are growing in number. The stormtroopers are growing. There are more and more stormtroopers. And you can see why. Because they're successful. They win all these street battles. They get a sense of pride and exaltation and happiness. So you put this whole answer together, you have the VAMO answer. You have verb, audience, message, outcome. ATQ, verb, audience, message, outcome, and context. Can I invite you to copy this question on Foolscap and copy the full answer to get a sense of how to write VAMO. And you will see that actually the context one is the hard one because that requires you to have some knowledge of the historical happenings. You can't just copy this on background information. You need to know what's happening in this period. So two things. One is that first of all, make sure you read your textbook, pick out the details, highlight the details, and try to remember them. But if you don't have this historical details, you don't know the particular year that well, you can write something vaguely, but it's okay to not achieve the context mark fully because the essence of purpose is in the first part, which is the verb, audience, message, outcome. Okay. I hope that this practice on this source helped you understand. Help you get warmed up on purpose. The video is already 37 minutes. I'm going to speed through question 6 and maybe we'll call it a lesson. So question 6, why was source B published? Explain your answer. I'll pause the video and try for yourself all the components. Try the components for yourself. I think pause for about 10 minutes. 10 minutes, try everything. And then let's go. So it was published in a German newspaper. Newspaper, clearly it's going to go to the German people. He wants to convince them. Yeah, convince is a very easy, very convenient, very flexible verb. He wants to convince them. I'm just going to take the message that the Nazi Party conducted many rallies and Hitler is charismatic and well loved by the German people, by ordinary Germans. You'll notice now that I twist the message a bit because I have an outcome in mind. I always twist the message a bit when I know the outcome, what the outcome of the source is going to be. In a way, you can see where I'm going with for this message. Right? Hitler's charismatic and well loved. He wants to convince German people. You know where I'm going. The outcome will be about the German people's actions. What would they do? So let me finish up the message part. This is evident from source B, which shows. I will change your worksheet. I'm sorry about that. Which shows crowds of German people in an audience for a Nazi event in 1926. They are rushing towards Hitler and desperately want to hear and listen to Hitler. So this is my evidence. This is done so that audience action, final result. Aside the audience, this is done so that the German people will. So this is like the German newspaper readers, right? The German people, the German people will see Hitler as a great leader and speaker who really is popular and understands the ordinary German. Thus, the German people will support the Nazis at elections, which will enable the Nazi Party to gain more power and eventually take control of Germany. Final result. For audience action, final result. Coming from the context of, we use the source here, 1926. The Nazi Party was one of many political parties. It needed support to win votes, and they portrayed Hitler as someone who was well liked by all Germans. So you can see how it's weaved together. The reason I have a message here about Hitler being charismatic and well loved is so that the German people will think Hitler understands the ordinary German, see him as a great leader, and thus they will support the Nazis, vote for the Nazis. And thus the Nazis will gain power and control Germany. So this is the final result. The audience action has led to a final result. At this point, pause, take notes on your on your worksheet. And I want you to also copy this full question and answer on foolscap. Staple it behind your set of notes. I will mark it to show you where the marks are awarded. So this is a tactile practice for you to really nail the purpose writing frame down, and for you to get feedback on where you are being credited at each stage of the purpose answer. I will go to the last question. I will finish up the last question for you. Study source C. Why did historian publish this account? Explain your answer. So for historian, typically there is a verb that we will associate. It will be educate. And the reason why the audience is readers today is because the year is 1997. So only for a historian's account, we don't really expect historical context. There's not much need to talk about the year 1997. You can just focus on the present as it is. So I don't have a historical context box for you. And in fact, I've already given you the outcome. So all you need to do here is message and evidence, which we already have done in the previous part of the worksheet. 3 minutes, you take the notes from the previous part of the worksheet. You know what, I'll do it. So we have all this. What does the historian want to achieve? What's the point of the historian's account? It's to educate readers today. Educate. You want people today to understand and know something. What do you want us to know, historian? That the Nazi Party was violent, aggressive, ruthless, took illegal actions. From the source, it's here. So the message was exactly as we crafted it in the previous part of the worksheet. Refer to the earlier part of this video if you want to see how we crafted the message for source C. The point for this doing this again is to now see the other parts, the verb, audience, and outcome. Educate readers today that Nazi Party was violent. We have all this evidence. So readers today will have a better and nuanced understanding of the Nazi Party's terrible and violent actions in 1930s. This is important. Historians always want us to better understand the past. That's their job as a historian, to help us learn about the past in a nuanced, complex, balanced, deep manner, have a deep understanding. So readers today will have a balanced and informed view of the German history and avoid repeating mistakes of the Nazis from the past. Have a critical approach towards the Nazis. Don't idolize the Nazis. Don't do Nazi salutes. The reason people look down on Nazi salutes is because it's as if you're saying the Nazis were great people. They were not. They were terribly violent. They were horrific. they stabbed out people's eyes and then stabbed them in front of their mothers. So the Nazis really were cruel and violent in the 1920s, cruel and violent to people in Germany in the 1930s and 1940s, cruel and violent to people outside of Germany when they were doing the world wars. The best way to learn at this point, you've absorbed a lot of information. The best way to learn is to sit on it, think about it, practice it. So for this set of worksheets, I want you to copy questions 5, 6, and 7, the purpose questions, copy them on foolscap and staple it behind this set of notes. To recap the purpose lesson, you must know the steps we call VAMO. So what do? We start ATQ. This, for example, this source was published because the source giver wanted to, and then we start with verb, right? Convince, criticize, educate, inform, praise, warn, assure, etc. Audience, German people, voters, Communist Party, Nazis, etc. Message. We learned this in the first part of the lesson. Main argument of the source by extracting ideas, combining them, and outcome. This is done so that, and then we have the audience action that leads to the final result and historical context. So you put in your own knowledge. Purpose is what the source wants to achieve. With whom the audience will hear the message of the source. The source wants to convince this audience or criticize this audience or educate this audience. This audience has gotten the message. They will take some action. It leads to a result, and that's the outcome. Verb, audience, message, outcome. Okay. I have taught you this purpose skill. This purpose skill is used for so many source-based skills. I hope this lesson will stick in your mind. Please copy the answers on foolscap. If you want to check your purpose answers, the rubric is on the last page of your notes, and this is where you can recap on whether or not you have achieved all the elements, verb, audience, message, outcome, context, that are needed for a good purpose answer. Okay, thank you for your time. I hope it's been fruitful, and I'll see you in the next lesson.